What everyday skill becomes suspicious if you are too good at it? Story 1. We went to a shooting range and fired a variety of guns for the first time. My wife's accuracy with the Glock was very impressive, and she topped the group scores by quite a way despite never firing a gun before. The trainer leant into me and, with his strong Eastern European accent, quietly said, "Check her background." She still tells that story to somebody almost monthly. I think sometimes people are just good at lining up points and or how trajectory works. I have no formal training, but I did grow up hunting and shooting, so I've had plenty of practice. I'm pretty damn accurate after a couple rounds with everything I've ever shot. It's almost like envisioning an invisible bullet path in my head. My daughter has been the same way so far. My wife and son, not so much. Story 2. My grandpa used to work in the film industry, making fake money for movies. He got so good that it started looking too real. He was then visited by the FBI. He didn't get in trouble or anything. They just told him he had to make the money look more fake. When I was 18, I'd gotten a short-term job wrapping motion picture money. It was for a film friend of a guy that managed a UPS store. They had a hiring sign on the front doors, so I initially walked in thinking it was a regular clerk job. Nope. I sat in the back room on a stool underneath the packaged peanut funnel, wrapping hundreds of bundles for months and never really got full details on anything, but it paid in cash. And I developed a niche skill. Story 3 probably has been mentioned here before, but being able to bullcrap your way out of situations. It seems like a good skill to have, but I think the only way you can develop it is to spend too much time talking to people you would have to bullcrap. I have this skill, and my wife rides the line of loving or being jealous of it and absolutely hating it. Despite my reassurance that I never do it to her, she is skeptical. I can bullcrap my way out of most things, but more importantly, I can bullcrap myself into things. I have a natural act like you belong talent. Best BS out, bullcrapped my way out of a 100 miles per hour over speeding ticket. Best BS into, when on vacation in Monaco, I managed to get a lobster tail directly from the kitchen of La Grill because my wife wanted seafood and there was no way we could afford to eat there. Story 4. Sales. It's done by millions of people every day, but real good salespersons creep me out. For me, the best salespeople are those who are genuinely personable, warm, and friendly. It goes further than that. They listen as well as talk. They explain the product casually during the two-way conversation, talk about options rather than special offers, and give absolutely no indication that they want or expect you to buy. And it's about building up trust, the way you would go about making the new friend. No pressure, just genuine interest and conversation. Many people try to fake this and they come across as shifty, smarmy, and fake. Story 5. Being an active listener. I recently went to a wedding shower for a longtime friend of my fiance's. He was a high school buddy of his, so all of the other 5 high school buddies and their significant others were there too. We played the classic Who Knows the Bride Better game, and I won out of the entire room. For context, I probably knew the couple the least amount of time out of everyone, but in the time that I knew them, I truly listened to them tell me about themselves. While I obviously have good intentions and everyone found it endearing that I truly listen to people, I feel like sometimes it comes off creepy when you know vivid details that someone told you years ago. Story 6. Eavesdropping. It's a combination of not being able to be noticed, active listening, good deduction skills, and all while seemingly being aloof to not reveal one's hand. It's amazing for reading the room while being seemingly preoccupied at the same time and gets you out of sticky situations. People are often freaked out when I seemingly know random bits of information that are most often true or privately disclosed. It's sort of a second nature to listen to stuff without looking like I'm listening. That, and I prefer not having eye contact since it's easier to digest information in my opinion. Yet strangely, when someone is directly talking to me, I mishear them from time to time, opposed to not being the one talked to. Story 7. The easiest way to look creepy is remembering people who don't remember you. Edit. But a really fun way to look like a jerk is when someone of the opposite gender comes up and says, "Don't I know you?" And you act like kind of a jerk shutting them down because you have a face that always reminds someone of someone they know. And you kind of resent how people are constantly using what's supposed to be a flimsy pickup line, but never to actually hit on you. And then later you realize you actually do know them. You both worked in a haunted house where you mostly saw each other wearing heavy prosthetic makeup. This once happened at a Portland strip club. This dancer on roller skates stopped her set to kneel down and insist we grew up together. And I was like, "I'm from another state and on a date." And the other men at the rail are looking extremely unhappy. If you don't start taking your clothes off, I'm going to get my butt kicked. Story 8. I have an ability to just stay awake, whether I've had caffeine or haven't, and I can do it for days. I used to be a GM at a hotel during COVID a couple years back, and staff retention hiring was tough, so I'd get called to cover overnights or breakfast, skipping back to back. My VP thought I did Coke or Adderall because I could just stay awake for days and function at normal capacity, covering shifts to keep us open for nurse housing. I'd crash so hard for a solid 5 hours after I'd stay up for days and wake up like I slept for 24 hours ready to go again. My memory is still good. My anxiety is trash, but if I ever need to be on watch during an apocalypse, I'm solid. Story 9. I'm extremely good at remembering names like some random guy that passed me by on the street. If I see him 5 years later, I will know exactly who he is. It comes from trying too hard to make friends at school, but now it looks creepy to be that good at names as an adult because most people whose names I remember will think I'm particularly interested in. I have remembered the names of every doctor I ever saw, a cop that arrested my boyfriend 3 years ago, drug dealers at every bar I was at, you name it. The worst thing is, I'm very excited about this talent, so if I see someone I know, I will unfortunately yell out their names before I can stop myself. Story 10. Using knives. My ex's family were rather disturbed by my pumpkin carving skills when they first witnessed it, using just a standard kitchen knife, and said they didn't know whether to be impressed or terrified, as I'd never done it before. And my zoo coworkers were disturbed by my seemingly innate ability to skin, gut, clean, and dismember the animals we breed and use for food from the first instruction, which I'll attribute to my love of horror films, possibly. Story 11. I'm a regional manager for an industrial company, so I have several offices that I travel between. All of them have various storage areas that are kept locked. I try to have all of the keys/combos, but sometimes a lock has been replaced since I was at a location last, or I don't have the key for. So I keep a lockpick kit with me, and I've learned a few other tricks. A couple years ago, my brother, my father, and I rented a cabin for a night as part of a kayaking or camping trip. We hiked in a few miles down into a valley to the cabin, and my dad realized that they either never gave him a key to the cabin when he checked us in, or he lost it somewhere on the hike in. Either way, it looked like someone was going to be marching back up the mountain to get a key. And while they were digging through their packs, hoping against hope to find the key, I quietly pulled out my pocket knife, shotgunned a beer, cut some shims out of the can, and shimmed the padlock open. The side eye they gave me was wondering why that was a skill that I possessed. Story 12. Facilitating staff, trying to be mindful and kind and go out of your way to help. I mean, people get suspicious weirdly at times when honestly I don't get it. My skill is helping work be a decent place. And some at first are just like, why? What are you up to? I'm trying to make the workplace just decent. Seriously, it makes life better for all, so what's suspicious about it? I don't know, I'm not too good at it, or don't know that I'm great at it, but I try so much that it's commented about. I think I was just in dysfunctional environments, enough LOL to not want to be there again. Story 13. I'm extremely good at learning full names, first and both last names. I read maybe once or twice on a website or something similar, even when I don't know the person in question. So, when someone I work with happens to need said info but only has the first name, I'm usually able to give them their full name, and it creeps them out. Similarly, I memorize license plates when I'm not even really trying to. So I'm able to quickly recognize if a passing car is just similar to one owned by someone I know, or if it's just a similar car. I'm called a psychopath every time I bring these up. Story 14. Throwing knives, I can throw almost anything pointed and stick it into a wall fairly accurately and hard. In college, a rental house I moved into had a ton of throwing knives in the garage, with a board and wood targets still set up. The garage was the typical hangout spot for my friends and I, and naturally we would just mess around with throwing knives, because there were 100 of them of all shapes and sizes. Then it quickly became who can stick from different lengths away, to full blow throwing competitions resembling horse for basketball LOL. Fast forward 4 years of doing this, and it was scary how well we became at it. Random people would come over, and a few of us would be doing this, and it would freak them out how good we all were. A lot. Had the house I moved into never had a whole ass target range and knives, I would have had zero interest in even learning or trying it. Didn't really think much of it until my girl's parents had a party at one of those axe and knife throwing bars for my girlfriend's sister's birthday. I never mentioned throwing knives for 4 years, like it was a hobby to my girlfriend or her family. So in front of her family, I got forced to throw 10 knives, all of them within 6 inches of each other, like I was throwing a baseball. Everyone just kind of looked at me like I was John Wick LOL. My girlfriend and her dad had questions. Story 15. Once I was TA for a special college summer course where graduate students, mostly with no biology background, were learning about the evolution of the nervous system, including through dissection of sea life. I also had no biology background, but was a postdoc asked to help. We had live caught animals and had to end them, of course, before dissecting or through dissection. A lot of students, understandably, were having a hard time with this. These were relatively simple creatures, no mammals or anything. But the way the class was set up, we started with the oldest examples of very primitive nervous system, and then would talk about the next step in evolution and what it helped the animals do. So we were discussing things like being aware of an outside environment, having drive, feeling pain, etc. A lot of students were very hesitant. I went in circles, pinning down, ending, and delivering the first blows for the students. I was doing laps. So many of them were struggling. I just had to go around getting rid of animal after animal. Some of them started making comments, mostly in jest. Although, one other thing I've been told I'm concerningly good at is reading people. So I'd already gotten a lot of jokes about being a psychopath from that crowd. I always say I'd have made an amazing assassin. Ironically, the reason I worked so quickly to get rid of the animals was because I didn't want them to suffer or die in vain. I knew the students were there to learn, so the deaths were not pointless. I am not a vegetarian, but damn well near, and my religious beliefs are very centered around the preservation of life and not destroying it without purpose. So I was standing there watching these animals half pinned or being delivered hesitant blows out of the seawater they needed to live, with students who I knew, if they didn't have to do the hardest part, would take a lot away from it, and figured the best thing for me to do was to carry that weight myself, because my lines around the sanctity of life were something I'd already processed pretty thoroughly. Story 16. Picking locks. I used to work with people with disabilities that lived alone. Just helping them with daily living, they locked their keys in their apartments a lot. Building management would happily charge them an unreasonable fee to walk from the building office on site to unlock the door for them. Wasn't so good for people on a fixed income. Anyway, I got some cheap lockpicks off Amazon and a pile of various locks from a thrift store for practice, and just messed with them while watching TV. Got a feel for it. Clients never paid a fee again to get back in their apartment. I probably cost that apartment complex thousands over the years I had that job. But screw me. Sometimes I help out coworkers or people I know who lost a key to something. They always have questions. It's more fun to leave them wondering. Story 17. Selling stuff and talking down prices on the marketplace. I've been a pawnbroker for many years. I once went on a date with a girl who had been trying to sell her old desk for a few, but she couldn't because she was asking $120 for it. I told her to price it to $80, which worked almost immediately because before we split off for the night, someone had already wanted to grab the desk. Basically told her the mental relief of the desk being gone will make the $40 she took off seem irrelevant. The first night we hooked up, I had helped her price out some other items she wanted to get rid of, all of which ended up selling within a few days. Story 18. In my line of work, sales, there's a method called mirroring, where you try to mimic the customer's tone and energy to be more relatable. I've spent many years trying to read people and am as introverted as it gets. So I like to think I do this very well, with my fellow men being the easiest to read. Well, my employer noticed this and refers to it as an advanced sales tactic. They pulled me into a Zoom with other employees who suck at closing sales and had me try to teach it to them. Story 19. Cleaning liquid spills. If Junior knocks over their glass, or the cat gets too close and personal with the fish tank, moat people just tend to throw a bathroom towel over it or get out the wet vac. Not super effective, and tends to allow time for staining. Some salt, aerosolized carpet foam, and some paper towels will clean up anything like it was never there, and in record speed, and all for the low, low price of making people uncomfortable as they imagine you as a mob cleaner. Story 20. Spatial awareness. I can look at something and tell you whether or not it will fit onto a wall, into a box or car, through a hallway or stairwell, etc. I was at a shipping store a few months ago, and a guy was in line behind me, trying to figure out which size box to get for the box he was trying to fit into it. I pointed at a specific size and said, "That one, but only if you put your box in this side up." It slid in perfectly, and he gave me the weirdest look. Somehow, though, I always seem to bump into the corners of tables. Story 21. Miss Excel. I found that by taking over reporting from others, because it took them so much time. I'd automate it to pull from the database where the previous owner was spending 2 hours a day, copy and paste hundreds of cells. A couple hours work once, and I hit a button. Done. I'd use it to release right away, even with a script to open, refresh, save, and email it. This caused people to not trust the numbers. So now I still pull in the data but hold off on releasing it for a bit, even a bit late on occasion. Edit. I see a lot of people wanting to learn Excel. I did a lot of trial and error learning. I'm in my mid 50s, so I have some time under my belt. Learning a simple programming language helps. I learned BASIC as a kid and Pascal and Fortran later. VB is the most useful at this point, though. In Excel, you can add a developer tab. Google it. It will show you how to add it to your Excel. You can record macros that record your steps when you do things like insert a column, copy a row, etc. You can then see how it works. Mr. Excel, not to be confused with Microsoft Excel, is a great resource. Also, learn VLOOKUPs. They are very helpful, and you can get how other formulas work. Finally, Google knows all. Story 22. We play this drinking game where you take the paper bag from the store, put it on the floor standing up, and you have to bend down on one foot and grab it with your teeth. Each round, you trim a few centimeters off the top and keep lowering the bag until there's a winner. One of my very unathletic friends at the time would easily win every round. It would just be him, and he was flexible enough to get the bag only 6 inches off the ground. People were super impressed, and I joked, "It's all that practice from sucking your own private parts." And the look he gave me, combined with the awkward laugh, made me think I might have been closer to the truth than I would have hoped. Story 23. Breaking into someone's car. A few years ago, I was at a new job, and a coworker locked her keys in her car. I got the door open in under a minute. The security guard watched me and had some concerns with the speed at which I opened that car without damaging it. Truth of the matter is that the guard wasn't paying attention completely to what I was doing. My first car was a two-door sports car, and I learned about a design flaw with those cars when my dumbass locked my keys in the ignition. She had a similar car and her keys in the ignition, so I took advantage of that design flaw to get her door open without damage to the car. Story 24. My grandpa, I swear he was magic, could always find a front row parking spot for anywhere we went. It didn't matter if people were parking out in the grass. If he drove up to the front, there was always a spot. If there wasn't, then immediately someone would pull out of their spot to leave. Always. Sadly, he did not pass down this magic to anyone. This matches well with my grandma, who is absolutely 100% a fae. It doesn't matter what kind of plant it is or what weather we have. Her plants are always perfect. They bloom early and keep blooming way longer than they should. We had an ice storm this last winter that took out so many trees. Every tree around my grandma's house was damaged and had broken limbs. Not hers. Her trees were fine. What? Story 25. Reading body language and being particularly sensitive to people. I have a friend who's so good at it, he knows what you're going to do before it ever even crosses your mind. First time he pulled the whammy on me was when I was just about to look for the remote and he handed it to me. No looking around or anything, I just shifted slightly, about to get up, and he goes, "Here's the remote." It seemed pretty cool at the time, but then a few weeks later we were eating out together and I couldn't decide on whether I should get dish A or dish B. He told me to get dish B, even though I'd never even voiced which dishes I was deciding over. I swear he's almost physic. Story 26. I have an uncannily strong sense of smell, which means I can go to the bathroom in school or work and know who was there based on the products used when people freshen up. Have also walked down the main street in Ginza and smelled someone I'd met 6 months ago before I turned around and saw them walking behind me. I can also predict if it's going to snow based on how the air smells. Twice I said in the middle of June, "Weird, it smells like snow." And twice there was a freak snowstorm overnight. All the people who laughed at me were giving me weird stares when they realized everything was covered in a layer of fresh snow. I guess I seem like some kind of voodoo witch. I can also tell how many hours it's been since your last meal or who you met before me just based on scent, which is why it is nigh impossible to cheat on me. Story 27. Ying and answering with double meaning. Don't know the term for this, but basically saying yes and no at the same time. So the other person thinks the answer is yes when you mean no. I did it all the time around my parents. I got good at it. So, like my father once asked for my opinion on him becoming a substitute teacher. He's a horrible teacher, too much ego and narcissism, and not enough respect or patience for others. Since at the time I lived with my parents, I didn't want to give an honest answer, and he was only looking for validation anyway. So I told him if he has evaluated his capabilities and found them suitable, he should pursue the best means to use those talents. He heard what he wanted to hear. My daughter supports me. I said what I meant. Leave me out of this. Your failure is on you. He became a sub, proved me right, and quit after a year, blaming the kids for being the reason. I just about never use it outside of my parents. Only once or twice when confronted with unstable people.